could, Mr. Mayor. I guess I'll ask staff this question. I was chair of Healthy Saanich in 2006 when we passed this previous motion. I think that I'd like to ask the planner if there was any comments or any work done with the NAV Canada around those issues.
But looking further into the file, I don't know the details. I certainly know there was work undertaken at the time. The specifics I'm not able to speak to tonight.
Okay, and another question, if I could. I've spoken to Pam Madoff, who was the councillor involved with the committee with the harbour and NAVCAN to develop some sort of new agreement, and I'm wondering if the planner has any information on that. When I last talked to Councillor Madoff, she told me it hadn't been signed yet.
Heard nothing to that effect. Our conversations, preliminary ones with the appropriate authorities, didn't lead to much beyond what we've experienced in the past, but I can certainly follow up with Councillor Madoff.
Okay. So, Mr. Mayor, I don't know if it's appropriate, but I do think that maybe Council should reaffirm the motion of 2006 and write the current MPs and the fellow that was mentioned by the speaker. I wrote it down, but I'm not sure I got the right spelling. So if that is appropriate, I'd like to move that.
Okay, just for everyone that doesn't have a copy here, what was written?
His name was John Crichton.
Christian?
Yeah, Crichton, C-R-I-C-H-T-O-N. And he's president and CEO of NAV Canada. Thank you.
Thank you. So the previous motion was that the Healthy Saanich Advisory Committee, which I think we would change to council, recommends that a letter be sent to the Ministry of Transport advising that council shares the concerns of Saanich residents with respect to noise and possible safety issues for floatplane and helicopter traffic, and request that the Minister evaluate alternatives to mitigate these concerns. And 2, requesting that the Minister establish a public consultation process with NAV Canada, where affected residents would be consulted and have an opportunity to provide input on any additions or changes to flight patterns, with the exception of medical or public safety emergency flights. And the copies of the letter be sent to, this was at the time, MP Gary Lunn, MP Keith Martin, MP Denise Savoy, MLA Murray Cole, NAV Canada, and the Victoria Airport Authority. So based on that, and based on Councillor Dermot's comments, should we amend this to include the GVHA? All right, and we're obviously going to update it for all the changes that have happened in the political world since then. I'm just looking for a nod from the audience that this might meet the needs that were expressed in your delegation presentation. Okay, that's good. All right, any more discussion? Councillor Haynes, please.
I'd like to thank Dorothy and David for going through the process to arrive here today. I'd like to thank you for going to Healthy Saanich. I know it's been a drawn-out process. The times that I visited with you, I'm aware of the issue. At the same time, you can see that there was work done in 2006, and I'm very pleased to hear from Councillor Brown a bit of an update about that, and there is files here. But you have the assurance from Council, and going through Healthy Saanich, the impact is on your health, and you come to the municipality to ask for help. So through this motion, we're going to go into a process which will hopefully get us the help to understand what is happening and how we can best address it. So I commend you on coming today. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. Thank you.
Any more discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question on this motion to reaffirm with modifications. All in favor? Opposed? Unopposed? That motion carries unanimously. And thank you, Councillor Brown, for your suggestion. So with that, we'll move on to the next item on the council meeting, which is the adoption of the minutes. Madam Clerk, would you please introduce the item for us?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This next item is the adoption of minutes of the special council, the regular council, and committee of the whole meetings of November 2nd.
Any changes to those minutes? Seeing none, I'll call the question on adoption. All in favor? Opposed? Unopposed? That motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Item C, Madam Clerk. Please introduce the item.
Thank you. C1 is the animals bylaw. It's the final reading of animals bylaw 9322. This is to align the payment due date and fee increase for dog licenses.
Someone move final reading?
Final reading.
Okay. Moved by Councillor Plant, seconded by Councillor Sanders. Call the question, all in favor? Opposed? None opposed, that motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Next item, please, Madam Clerk.
This item is final reading of the water utility bylaw amendment 9357 to implement changes to the terms of the district's utility penalties.
Move final reading.
Moved by Councillor Plant, seconded by Councillor Haynes. Call the question, all in favor? Opposed? None opposed, that motion carries unanimously. Thank you. All right, we'll now move on to public input for the council portion of the agenda. If you have comments for the Committee of the Whole, parking on Glendenning Road, the development permit application for 317 Tillicum Road, or the development permit application for 3934 Quadra Street, if you could please hold your comments to that portion of the meeting. If you'd like to speak on the other items on the agenda, under E, F, G, and H, I will invite you up to the microphone to speak to those items. The members of the public who wish to speak, please come forward.
Good evening, I'm Rob Wixon, I live at 2836 Hines Drive, the president of the Gorge Tillicum Community Association. I figured I'd better come up today just sort of to wrap up the cycle of conversation that we started a few meetings ago, and to say, first of all, thank you very much for the level of interest that's been placed on the derelict boat issue. We appreciate the fact that we have seen some significant action in terms of at least some conversations that involve solutions, which are important. And we know that these solutions are difficult and expensive, and we worry about setting the precedent, much like you probably will. However, in this situation, I think we can't wait too long, because the longer we wait, the more likely we're going to get recurrence of the same issue. But at the same time, I think it's important for us not to forget the end game, which is to try and create some sort of status, regulation, or process to prevent this from occurring in the future. So we've been having conversations, probably like you guys, with other neighborhoods that are impacted by this. And hopefully Wednesday night is a GWI, Gorge Waterway Initiative meeting. Hopefully we can sort of get some regional effort towards thinking how these things can be managed in a better, holistic way. Victoria is going through their process, and it looks like they're getting very close to actually changing things. I think that we need to join in and figure out what it is that we need to do to make sure that we can protect ourselves from the immigration of these kinds of vessels into our neighborhood. It's a very nice spot to anchor if you've got a long enough chain, and I can see the attractiveness of it if there's no other available site. So I really want to, again, thank you for the efforts that have been made. We've got a nice letter from the CAO and explaining things, and the item on the agenda tonight will go a long way towards resolving the current issue, but we have to remember the long game. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. Are there any of the members of the public who wish to speak to this portion of the agenda? If you'd like to speak to the exempt staff bylaw, the heritage designation bylaw, external audit services, renewal of insurance portfolio, the boiler replacement tender, derelict boats in the gorges we just heard, our calendar, and food and beverage operations. Now is the opportunity to provide comment on those items. Calling for a second time, any members of the public that wish to speak? Calling for a third time? Seeing none? Okay, thank you. I'll close the public input period, and we'll move on to item E, bylaws for third readings. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This first item under bylaws is for 3 readings of the exempt staff bylaw 9362 with respect to remuneration, benefits, and representation of exempt employees.
First reading. Second.
Thank you. Call the question. All in favor? Opposed? None opposed? Motion carries.
Move second reading. Second.
Thank you. Call the question. All in favor? Opposed? None opposed? That motion carries.
Move third reading. Second.
Thank you. Call the question. All opposed? Sorry, call the question. All in favor? Opposed? None opposed? That motion carries. Thank you so much. Next item, please, Madam Clerk.
Thank you. This is the Heritage Designation Bylaw. This is first reading of Heritage Designation Bylaw 9361 to approve the Heritage Designation for the Municipal Hall by retaining the existing Heritage Designation for the building exterior and by identifying and protecting interior features and fixtures and specific landscape features. This is going to public hearing tomorrow, the 17th, so this is for first reading as a procedural item.
Second.
Call the question, all in favor? Opposed? Councillor Plant is opposed? That motion carries. Thank you so much. Let's move to the next item, please, Madam Clerk.
This is resolutions for adoption. This is for RFP 22 for the external audit services. The report of the Director of Finance is recommending the Council award the RFP to KPMG LLP for an estimated value and all options exercised for $195,000, and that KPMG be appointed as the District of Saanich auditors for the duration of the contract. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Plant?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a question for you, staff. I'm just not clear, is this for a 1 year or a 2 year contract?
Mr. Mayor, this is for 1 year with an option to renew for additional 2 year or additional 2 1 year periods.
Okay, thank you.
Any more questions, or would someone like to move the recommendation?
I'll move the recommendation.
Thank you. Any more discussion on this item? So now I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? None opposed. That motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Next item, please, Madam Clerk.
This next item is the renewal of insurance portfolio. The report of the Director of Legislative Services is recommending that Council approve the renewal for the 2015-2016 insurance portfolio in the amount of $450,930.
Moved by Councillor Sanders. Will someone second it? Seconded by Councillor Haynes. Any discussion on this item? Seeing none, I'll call the question on this recommendation. All in favor? Opposed? None opposed. That motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Next item, please, Madam Clerk.
Next item is the tender number 28 for the boiler replacement Public Safety Building. The report of the Director of Engineering is recommending that Council approve the award for the boiler replacement and change orders within the project budget to Apex Steel and Gas Limited in the amount of $264,439.
Thank you.
Move the recommendation.
Moved by Councillor Plant, seconded by Councillor Brown. Councillor Demmer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to take a moment to thank staff for, I think, an excellent report and an excellent project. Not only will this save us money operationally over time, it will reduce greenhouse gases as well. And finally, given the new design with a series of smaller boilers, any need for changes in the future should be much easier and also should stop us from any kind of service disruption. So I think this is well put together and I very much appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dermott. Any more discussion? Call the question on this recommendation. All in favor? Opposed? None opposed. That motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Next item, please, Madam Clerk.
This next item is the derelict grounded boat in the gorge. The report of the Chief Administrative Officer is recommending that Council authorize staff to arrange for the removal and disposition of the grounded boat.
I was going to ask for discussion, but I thought I might ask the Administrator to just introduce this item and how we got to this point in his recommendation for the benefit of the audience and ourselves.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you're aware, last time this was here, the council requested that I obtain a cost estimate for the removal of a boat which had drowned in the gorge. We have talked to the federal government. The process there is to apply to the receiver of REX to take custody of the boat. That is a lengthy period of time. It would go at least 30 days, and then to try and find the owner. In the interim, our efforts of our city solicitor going out on a Saturday to find the owner, had discussion with the owner, and as identified in the report here, the owner was very cooperative. He was very sorry for what has happened, but he did not have the financial means in order to remove the boat. So in discussions, he did offer to turn the boat over to Saanich. He has signed an agreement, should council accept this tonight, turning it over. And this essentially would short-circuit the process of applying to the federal government. And we are really at this point tonight where we might be 6 or 8 weeks from now had we applied to the federal government. So there's some reluctance in terms of making these recommendations because this is another area where local governments are being asked to step into the federal and provincial responsibilities. However, looking forward, I think we would be here probably going through the process after that application. And it's my view that at this point, for the best interest of the citizens, that we take action now, because I think we're going to be there in 8 weeks, and the intention here is to move this forward, because, and also to follow up on the recommendations you made previously about indicating to the federal government and the province that they had a responsibility. We would expect them to step up in the future in these areas and change the legislation.
Thank you. Councillor Plant? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm going to give Councillor Haynes the floor. My apologies, go ahead.
So it's very interesting that we're in this position, and I think it's the best possible outcome we could have asked for. All of the reading that we've done over the last several weeks on this, courtesy of our CAO pointing us in the right direction to what we need to be looking at, talks to find the owner, find the owner, find the owner. They actually say it 3 times, because it lets you get where you need to be quicker, with less grief, and at lowest possible cost. There is still the cost to remove. So I'd like to compliment our staff, particularly our CRO, the councillors' support, and also the members of the Community Association. And it was this synergy of working together that led us get to where we needed to be today. So I just want to recognise everybody's input and express my appreciation for that.
Thank you. Councillor Plant.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a question through you back to staff. I'm curious to know if this boat owner owns any property in Saanich upon which future tax levies could be issued to recover the cost of this activity.
To the best of our knowledge, he doesn't, and we don't have the legislative ability to collect taxes on this, even if he did.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Dermott and Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I certainly support the recommendation, and I really thank staff for the efforts they have made in this respect to facilitate the process. This is a jurisdictional nightmare with the fact that it is a navigable waterway. There are provincial powers, there are federal powers, and we have some very limited powers ourselves. I agree that this is by far the best and most efficacious way to move forward. It does hopefully not set too much of a precedent. If somebody is wanting to dispose of a boat, we don't want them to set it adrift down the gorge and us wind up doing the job for them. But in this case, I think it is, for the needs of the community and needs of the municipality, the very best way we can move. What that does tell us, I think, is we will need to, as a council, put as much pressure on the federal government and federal representatives from this area in the future to come up with legislation that allows these kinds of issues to be dealt with more expediently and hopefully with less cost. And perhaps it takes some of the responsibility that their own jurisdiction should impose upon them, and that right now they either don't do or hide behind such a lengthy process of rules and regulations that it becomes really non-functional for the municipality and for citizens. So I'm glad staff brought this forward. I think it's good, but I do think we're going to need to push our federal and provincial counterparts as hard as we can on this issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dermott. Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I too want to reflect that I agree with Councillor Dermott that we don't want to be seen as if someone sets their boat adrift because they can't deal with it, and then Saanich steps up and deals with all these derelict boats. It could be quite onerous. This is a federal and provincial issue. We need to keep pushing those authorities. The more councils take on, the more you pay at your taxes. So I think this is the best situation for this particular boat. And I am very pleased that City of Victoria is going to do some sort of presentation at the Gorge Waterway Initiative so that there can be more of a coordination or cooperation with jurisdictions that operate this waterway. Not only municipalities, but CUD has no authority, but we can act as a voice for the municipalities to talk about how we're going to work on this together. I think it was unfortunate that this boat ended up set adrift when the winds picked up, and of course on the weekend we had a few more coming our way at Cabaret Bay. So I'm supportive of the motion. Thanks.
Thank you. Any more discussion? Okay, we've had some good work from our staff. It hasn't been very easy. I've heard from the Community Association most greatly affected by this. I'm looking for some nods from the back that we're on the right path, and I see we have that. So with that, I'll call the question on this recommendation. All in favor? Opposed? Unopposed? Carries unanimously. Thank you. Next item, please, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This next item is a procedural item. This is with regard to the cancellation of the January 4th, 2016 regular meeting in lieu of the council or the Christmas and statutory holiday season.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We normally do this because we advertise our calendar in advance. It's part of the charter that we do this, and in order to make changes, we have to bring this back to council for a vote. Councillor Plant.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will move that council cancel the January 4th council and committee of the whole due to Christmas and New Year's statutory holidays.
Second.
Thank you. Any more discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Unopposed? That carries unanimously. Thank you. All right, we're on to the last item on the regular council portion.
Yes, this item is the food and beverage operations and the 2016-2017 Gulf rates. The recommendation from the Finance, Audit and Personnel Standing Committee is that council endorse a 2-year term for the assistant manager position, and also to endorse the recommended 2016-2017 Gulf rates.
Great, thank you. Councillor Brown.
I'll move the recommendation, but I have a question to staff, please.
All right, thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Brown.
Thank you. I see that Mr. Henderson's in the audience. I'm curious about the golf rates, and there's a sentence in here that says past revenue is down compared to 2014. And I'm wondering what sort of program to incentive or what sort of other initiative you might be looking at to get pass holders more engaged with buying passes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Councillor Brownoff. I think if you recall back to the 2009 or 2010 TruStar report, there was a recommendation at that point to look at trying to move towards more of a green fee focus as far as revenue is concerned, and so that's what's been happening over the last number of years. Certainly in terms of those folks that are interested in maintaining a pass, we are encouraging them to hang on to those. The prices have been going up because the price per average round was very, very low. And so this year we had recommended a 3.5% increase on both the passes, both the full and the weekday passes. Last 3 years, we've been looking at a 5% increase on the full pass and 3.5% increase on the weekday pass. We have, since last year, we've included a 10% discount on the food and beverage offerings upstairs, or sorry, food offerings upstairs in the clubhouse. We did not swipe for rounds in the mid-January to the end of February period of this year, and we're proposing that continues for next year as well. So those are a couple of things that we're trying to do to provide some value while still trying to make sure that the price per round is reasonable.
So it would be fair to say, I mean, if we had more pass holders, then that's more revenue we know in the bank as opposed to counting on weather and green fees and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that I would encourage you to look at other means, and it will be interesting to see if these two things you've mentioned has an impact on more pass holders for next year. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Dermott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. For you, Mr. Henderson. I would agree with Councillor Brownoff that you need to get the correct balance between pass holders and green fee players, because pass holders in fact become de facto members of your club, and in some ways the core of it. One of the things in the past that I've noticed, in our case with pass holders, they're booking ability and privileges was almost second to green fee players. I'm a member of the Cedar Hill Squash Club. Not that I particularly get squash at a discount rate, but what I do get is the ability to book one day ahead of general fee players, and so it gives me a certain certainty of times. Have we considered extending that kind of privilege to pass holders? Not increasing the number of rounds in their pass or anything of that nature, but making, giving them some advantages in terms of booking.
Currently, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Dermott, currently the full pass holders have a 5-day in advance booking similar to the green fee players, and the weekday pass holders have a 3-day advance booking. What we have looked at is the value per round, or the price per round, and the privileges that go along with that. And so certainly the green fee folks are paying the higher price per round. Those revenues have been going up over the last couple of years. And then we recognize the commitment that the full pass holders are providing in terms of what would, if these rates are approved tonight, is about $1,700, I believe, that we'd be looking at for the season. And so it's a balance between as I mentioned earlier, in terms of the rate per round that we're receiving and the privileges that go along with that. I think the number of pass holders that we have right now is roughly around 300, and we're finding that the full pass holders, who are primarily interested in playing on weekends, we haven't heard a lot from them that they're not able to book the tee times that they want. There may be the occasional situation. That's actually a good problem to have, but I think generally they have been able to book the tee times that they're interested in booking.
Okay, I do notice the numbers of passes is going down, as Councillor Brownlow pointed out, and I would just suggest that the committee, at the course, consider the possibility of making booking times attractive for pass members. That might attract more. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Plant.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was planning on voting in favor of this. I just have a question because something came up that I haven't heard of before, and I sit on the Finance Audit Personnel, and you mentioned not swiping in January and February. Can you explain what that means, please?
Obviously, the weather is not that great. The course conditions are a little more challenging, and so as a benefit for the pass holders, what we instituted for this past season was they could still come. We still recorded the rounds, but we didn't reduce the number of playable rounds that they had. So they have, I think, 45 rounds or 50 rounds, depending on which pass you buy, to use from October the 15th to April the 15th. And so we sort of take a moratorium during that mid-January to late February time period when the course is in its most challenging. And that's not in a positive term as far as golf is concerned. So this is something that the club had asked for, and we considered and instituted that last season as part of the fees and charges that were brought forward.
Does it make a huge impact on the bottom line? Because it sounds essentially that people are getting some free golf out of it.
Not for the pass holders, no. They pay their pass fee on an annual basis. It's just that if they play 10 or 15 rounds during that time period, that's sort of an extra 10 or 15 rounds. There isn't an incremental cost to the course. It's not like they would have been coming and paying a green fee during that time period.
Was this just a decision made at the management level or at the director level?
No, as I said, this was a request that came from the golf course, the golf club.
And did it go through council before? I just don't recall.
It was raised as part of the fees and charges process a year ago. So it would have been previous council. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I just hadn't heard it before.
Yeah.
And I think it's great people are going golfing in the rain, and that's what's happening. I just didn't know what free swipes meant. Thank you.
Any more discussion or questions? Madam Clerk, we have a motion on the floor.
Yes, we do, Mr. Mayor, and that motion is to accept the recommendation of the Finance Audit and Personnel Standing Committee that would approve the position for another 2 years, or the extension of that position, and endorse the golf rates.
All right, thank you. With that, I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? None opposed. That motion carries unanimously. Thank you. All right, that completes the council portion of the agenda, and I'll now look for a motion to adjourn council and move to committee of the whole. By Councilor Plant, seconded by Councilor Brown. Call the question.